Smart thinking skills for critical understanding and writing. This audiobook's words are inscripted from the book of Matthew Allen and voice is done by Logan from podcastle.ai. We do not hold any real authority to it. Content 3. Linking, the key process in reasoning. Claims are the basic material of reasoning, but they must be linked together if we are to argue and explain our points of view. We have already seen that claims that are linked to a conclusion by supporting it or explaining it are called premises. A conclusion, therefore, is a claim that is supported or explained. In this chapter we investigate this linking process in more detail. My principal goal, again, is to give you greater awareness of how you reason, in order to improve what you actually do. There are 4 main areas we will cover in this chapter. We will examine natural language for the traces of this linking. Traces are the signals in natural language that we only half consciously use to develop our reasoning within a narrative flow format what you normally read and write. 2. We will look at the process of linking analytically, introducing the idea that all important relationships between claims can be shown in a diagram. Combining the diagram with a list of claims provides a clear, analytical structure format without the confusions of natural language. To assist in understanding the analytical structure format, we will learn about casting the reasoning of others as a useful exercise for skill development. We consider in more detail what we need to know in order to be comfortable expressing our critical thoughts in such a format, including the way in which complex argument forms can be shown using a diagram. Links between claims. Evidence of the linking process. We can directly see claims in natural language, but linking, the process of one reasoning, can only be inferred indirectly. In any argument or explanation in natural language we can find the evidence of this linking process in the words or phrases that show or signal how one claim relates to another. We have already come across these words. Remember these examples? Your car is dirty because you drove through some mud. You should wash your car since your car is dirty. The words because and since do not pound autumn part of the claims the premises and conclusions but link them together, signaling which claim is the premise and which the conclusion. These signal words are the visible traces of the mental process of linking. Because of the richness and complexity of the English language, we rarely find evidence for every act of linking. Sometimes no link words are used because the sense of the reasoning is clear just from the arrangement of the claims. Sometimes punctuation does the job. At other times, when it is stylistically appropriate, phrases or even sentences signal the linking process. Link words are not necessarily written directly between the premises and the conclusion, but since their function is not determined by their position in a text, they can nevertheless still signal which claim is which. In all cases, the linkages are between 2 or more claims, so that any link words can signal that both a premise and a conclusion are present and can distinguish between them. Here are some examples. I found out today that I had passed my exam. I was elated. The order of the sentences signals that the first claim is linked to the second claim as premise to conclusion. Because I felt ill, I went home from work. Because signals that I felt ill is the reason that explains the conclusion I went home from work. The comma serves to show that there are 2 claims here and hence, that some link can be inferred. We need to learn to think. It helps us to do better at work and to do better at university. The colon separates the claims and at the same time, links them. The sense of the sentence signals the link between the first part, the conclusion, and the second part, the premises. John has passed his final exams. This means that he is a fully qualified lawyer. The phrase "this means that" is the linking element here. This refers to the first claim and means that signals that the second sentence contains a conclusion. Because the second claim is identified as a conclusion and is linked to the first, we know that John has passed his final exams is a premise. Everyone knows that Australia has great natural beauty and a marvelous climate, and that makes it clear why many tourists come here. Everyone knows that signals that a premise or premises are following it, and that makes it clear why links these premises to many tourists come here the conclusion that these premises explain. The problem of understanding linkages. There are many different words and phrases that appear in natural language to link claims together explicitly. There are also many ways of writing claims so they are clearly linked, but the linkages are not dependent on having the link words there in your writing. If you think, for example, that Australia should become a republic because this change will make Australia a more independent nation, then the linkage of this conclusion with this premise occurs because you think it is so long as you have sound reasons for that thought. Link words such as because are very useful as signposts, which you can use to help others follow your reasoning, but they are the result of your thought processes. Simply putting in a word such as thus or because cannot make unlinked claims magically become an argument. In other words, we must think through the analytical structure of our ideas before we express them in words. If we do this, and have some proficiency in writing, then the proper signals and traces of our analysis will emerge through our texts. If we simply learn to write rather than think, then it is unlikely that our analysis will improve. No matter how hard we try to write better, we will often fail. The complex ways in which we signal the links in language are well suited to the requirements of naturally expressing our arguments and explanations, but they impede us in trying to understand and control our reasoning processes. First of all, links between claims proceed and exist independently of their written expression. Because of the ways in which we use language, it is often hard to see the logic in what someone is saying or writing, and probably harder still to write and speak ourselves in ways that make clear to our audience just what the reasoning is behind our views. The solution is to find a format or way of writing that breaks reasoning down into two components. First, the claims, and second, the way in which they are linked together. The analytical structure of reasoning. Representing the analytical structure, there are two ways of understanding what we read and write. First, there is what I am calling the narrative flow, that is, words arranged into sentences, and then divided into paragraphs. Second, there is the analytical structure, which is expressed in a list of claims and a diagram or picture showing how they are related to one another. Imagine that we have been asked to give our views on the environment by stating one action that people should take to help improve the world's environment. The following is an argument on this topic in the narrative flow format. All motor cars should be fitted with devices that reduce the pollution caused by their exhausts. My reasoning for this view is as follows. Car exhaust emissions are one of the most significant causes of air pollution, and if we are going to tackle the problem of improving the environment, we should concentrate on the major causes of pollution. Also, it is relatively simple to fit the appropriate anti-pollution device and will not cause dramatic social and economic upheavals in the way people live. But there is another way to express the argument, picking out the key claims and the links between them. All motor cars would be fitted with devices that reduce the pollution caused by their exhausts. Car exhaust emissions are one of the most significant causes of air pollution. If we are going to tackle the problem of improving the environment, we should concentrate on the major causes of pollution. It is relatively simple to fit appropriate anti-pollution device. Fitting appropriate anti-pollution devices will not cause dramatic social and economic upheavals in the way people live. What the analytical structure format offers. The analytical structure format, then, is a much clearer way of showing the exact claims being made and the ways in which they relate to one another. This format, by representing the connections between claims through the standardized form of the diagram, avoids all of the vagaries of the English language that we have already seen, with its myriad ways of signaling what is the conclusion and what are the premises. By listing the claims as distinct entities, it also overcomes complex sentence formations, with multiple claims within sentences, claims within claims, half-expressed claims, and so on. All the potentially confusing shorthand use of pronouns, such as this and it, and implicit cross-referencing is removed in favor of precisely written claims. Finally, the diagram, with group premises, clarifies all of the clever ways of writing that make English interesting to read but that mean it is hard to recognize just exactly which premise leads to which conclusion, and in combination with which other premises. Here is a more complex example of how one argument can be expressed in two different formats, as narrative flow and as analytical structure. While there is much about this argument that you may not yet understand and we explore the details in later chapters, for the moment, just use it as a point of comparison between the two formats. First, here is the underlying structure, expressed as a list of claims and a diagram to show how they relate to one another. The Internet has no single regulatory body to impose censorship. The Internet is hard to censor consistently and reliably. The Internet is a new communications medium that is available for anyone to use. Vast amounts of violent and pornographic material are available on the internet. Children often have access to the internet. Children will, sooner or later, view violent and pornographic material on the internet. And here is how we might write this argument in natural language. We need to be keenly aware that children will, sooner or later, view violent and pornographic material on the internet. It is a new communications medium that is available for anyone to use. The net, since it has no single regulatory body to impose censorship, cannot be consistently and reliably censored, meaning that vast amounts of violent and pornographic material are available on it, and as we know, children often have access to the internet. Learning more about the analytical structure behind narrative flow. The primary purpose of the analytical structure format is to assist you in planning your own writing. However, it is very useful to look at other people's reasoning as a way of learning about it. We can recover this analytical structure by, first, finding the claims being made and, second, grasping the connections between them, some signals of which can be found in the traces of reasoning represented by any linking words or phrases. Before moving on to look at how we can use the analytical structure in our own writing, let us use it as a tool to understanding other people's reasoning. Casting, the process by which we recover an analytical structure from a written argument 3 is called casting. I will work through an example, step by step, and then provide some practice examples. We will use the following natural argument, a very simple one that I have constructed to help demonstrate this process. Let's consider the facts. Chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby, and one has been built near your house. You'd be crazy to put yourself in danger. No, that's why you should move and live somewhere else. Let's consider the facts. Chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby, and one has been built near your house. You'd be crazy to put yourself in danger. No, that's why you should move and live somewhere else. So, what is the first step? Earlier in this chapter, we looked at how natural language contains traces of reasoning words that are not part of the claims, but which represent the way the author is linking those claims together. I will underline the words that signal reasoning. Let's consider the facts. Chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby, and one has been built near your house. You'd be crazy to put yourself in danger. No, that's why you should move and live somewhere else. The second step is the crucial one. Identify and mark the claims that are being made. We have already looked at the properties of claims in Chapter 2, and here you see why that discussion is so important. The easiest way to mark these claims is by putting them in parentheses. I have also numbered the claims because we need to diagram their interrelationship later. Let's consider the facts. Chemical factories are very dangerous to live nearby, and one has been built near your house. You'd be crazy to put yourself in danger. 3. No, that's why you should move and live somewhere else. Finally, we need to draw a diagram that shows how these claims link together. The conclusion always comes last and the premises go above it. How did I work out what the conclusion was? Look at the linking phrase "that's why" in the last line. That refers to all the things previously said, and "why" here means these are the reasons that explain or justify why something else is reasonable. So, on that basis, I have determined that the author intended the last claim as the conclusion, with the other claims being the premises that form one reason why that conclusion is justified. Also, note that I have had to deal with a contracted claim. One has been built near your house. If we were writing this claim out formally, it would be a chemical factory has been built near the house where you live, but in natural language, the narrative flow means the author instead has written one, referring back to a chemical factory in the first claim and your house, implying a connection to live in the first claim. A key part of good casting, and indeed good reading, is to be able to see the contractions necessary for good narrative flow and yet recognize the substance of the analytical claims being made. Using the analytical structure for planning, communication involves much more than just reasoning, and that is why we do not usually communicate via diagrams and lists of claims. But that said, when we want to express our arguments and explanations clearly and effectively, we need to think carefully about the analytical structure that lies behind the narrative expression of reasoning. It is hard to recover this structure precisely from what you read because authors themselves are often not in control of their reasoning. It is also tricky simultaneously to write a narrative flow and reason analytically. So, before we write, We should plan our work on the basis of the reasoning that we wish to embed within our written expression. A very effective way to do this planning is to use the analytical structure format, and by properly planning our work, we will dramatically improve the quality and readability of our written and oral communication. How do we develop an analytical structure format? First of all, start thinking about structure and the logical connections between your ideas, rather than how you will actually write them. Decide what your conclusion will be. Write this claim out carefully, expressing exactly what you mean. Number it 1. Then think about the reasons that you are giving for this conclusion. These reasons must be written as proper claims, this time serving as premises that either explain how that conclusion comes about or show why it should be accepted. Try to keep related premises together, but as the diagram will show these relationships clearly, it is not essential to group them perfectly. Write them out, making sure that you do not use pronouns but express each claim so that it makes sense in and of itself. Number them from 2 onwards. Focus on giving the main reasons for the conclusion at this stage. Begin to draw the diagram to show the relationships between the claims. At this stage, the key point is to realize that the symbols you draw in the diagram do not make the reasoning. They are, instead, a representation of the implied links that come from the way you have constructed your claims. Use the line underneath a group of related premises. Use the arrow to show a premise to conclusion relationship. Stop and think. Are you missing any claims? Do you need more premises? Have you got the relationships the way you want them to be? Make changes if required, adding claims and redrawing the diagram if need be. If necessary, repeat step 4. Here are 5 important points to remember when doing this process. Each claim must stand on its own. Do not include pronouns that refer to nouns elsewhere in the argument. Thus, illegal immigrants are treated badly in Australia is a well-written claim, whereas they are treated badly in Australia is not who are they referred to here. Do not include signals of reasoning in claims. Therefore, illegal immigrants are treated badly in Australia is not a proper claim. The word therefore does not belong, since the diagram will show that this claim is the conclusion. Each claim must imply links to other claims which, when added together, show the reasoning. Refugees are treated badly in Australia, and Australia violates international human rights treaties. Don't connect with one another unless there are other claims. The word Australia appears in both, but other claims involving internal connections between, say, refugees and international human rights must also be included. You cannot use the symbols the line and arrow for just any purpose. Simply drawing extra arrows or lines does not work. The relationship signaled by these symbols must be there already in the claims. Do not be afraid to revise and rewrite, changing the wording of the claims, moving them around so they fit together logically is the reason you do this process. It is called iteration. You do one version, review it, see if it makes sense, and if not, you change it and review again. In later chapters we will explore the subtleties of this process. For now, practice the method as you understand it at the moment. Complex analytical structures. A simple argument or explanation is one in which one layer of claims the premises links to another claim the conclusion. In a simple argument, the premises are on one level and the conclusion on a second. There may be more than one arrow in the diagram for a simple argument, but each arrow marks out a separate reason that is directly connected to the conclusion. A complex argument or explanation such as that in exercise 3, on the other hand, has an analytical structure with more than 2 levels of connection. The purpose of each layer of claims is to show or explain the claim to which they lead via the arrow. As we will see in Chapter 5, such structures make our reasoning more effective. A complex structure is easy to understand once we realize that it is built up from a group of simple arguments. Here are 2 simple arguments. The important thing to note is that they share a common claim. 1. Australia is a multicultural society. 2. There are people from many different ethnic communities living in Australia. 3. Different ethnic and racial communities contribute different cultures to a society. 4. Government policies and widespread community attitudes encourage these different cultures to mix together and flourish. And 5. Australia is a tolerant and interesting nation. 6. Multicultural societies show more tolerance towards different groups. 7. Multicultural societies are more interesting than those in which one culture dominates at the expense of other possible cultures. 1. Australia is a multicultural society. Claim 1 appears twice. In the first example it is being used as the conclusion and thus will come below claims 2-4 in the diagram. In the second example, claim 1 is functioning as a premise and, thus, goes with the other premises above claim 5. Because of the common claim, we can combine the two simple examples to produce a more complex structure, whose relationship would be easily diagrammed. Because the first layer of the diagram does not lead directly to the conclusion, but instead to claim 1, we can call the argument supporting claim 1 a subargument. It is subsidiary though still important to the main argument for claim 5. Theoretically, there is no limit to the ways that simple arguments can combine in this manner, but for practical purposes, we may want to limit ourselves to no more than 3 or 4 levels of claims so that the process does not become unwieldy. But it is crucial that we understand the basic idea behind complex structures. Any conclusion is, at base, a claim for which premises are being given. There is nothing to stop that claim from simultaneously serving as a premise itself, which leads another conclusion. Review. In this chapter we have looked at the key process of reasoning, linking. When developing arguments and explanations, we link information expressed as claims. In naturally expressed reasoning, the evidence for this process can be found in certain words and phrases, or even in the arrangement of the claims. But to understand and control reasoning better, this natural expression is inadequate. It is better to work with a format that shows the analytical structure of reasoning more accurately and consistently. This format may not be suitable for communicating, but it is a tremendous tool for understanding and controlling reasoning in our minds. The analytical structure of reasoning can be shown by separating an argument or explanation into a list of claims, the interrelationships of which are represented in a diagram using standardized symbols. We can combine a number of simple structures into complex, overlapping, and more effective reasoning. All the intricacies of reasoning can be reduced to a much simpler format. Our initial puzzlement results, not from the complexity of the structured format, but from our unfamiliarity with it. The analytical structure of other people's arguments and explanations can, if we wish, be recovered by casting them into the structured format. However, the analytical structure format is more useful as a tool for planning and thinking about our own reasoning than as a means of direct communication. Thank you for listening. This was an end to the Content 3 of the book Smart Thinking Skills for Critical Understanding and Writing, which is written by Matthew Allen and vocal by Logan of Podcastle. Other parts of it will be uploaded soon.